Alright, moms and dads, this video is on a word that you might not be familiar with. It's a word that doesn't come around too often, yet it's critical for your kiddo's brain and nervous system, especially if they have a sensory processing issue. Maybe they deal with ADHD, even anxiety. If they're going to OT or PT, this word is absolutely critical. Maybe you're working on strengthening their core and their motor tone. Maybe they are having trouble walking or talking. This word is proprioception. I'm going to explain in this video what it is, what you can look for in your kiddo, why it impacts brain development, and most importantly, what you can do to help your kiddo out. So proprioception, while you may not have heard of that word, you probably have heard the term that movement is life. And one of the reasons that movement is life is because when our bodies move, we actually are feeding this sensation into our brain to help with our brain's awareness of our body, but also for a kiddo to help with their growth and their development. So if you are ever seeing your kiddo, maybe they crave really deep hugs. Maybe they chew a lot and they're always chewing on their pencil, or they need a special chewy toy. Maybe they're toe walking. Maybe they're always fidgeting and moving. Maybe they love like a weighted blanket and that really calms their system. Those are all signs that their brain is not getting enough proprioception, because proprioception is our brain's awareness of where our body's at. It comes from all the little joints and the little muscles. So when we move, proprioception is feeding a ton of information into our brain. How you might recognize this as an adult is, think of the last time you had to sit on an airplane, or you sat all day at your desk, and what do you want to do at the end? You want to move, right? Because when you're sitting absolutely still, how does that make your brain feel? It starts to make your brain feel maybe a little stressed, maybe a little worried, a little anxious, a little nervous. You want to get that movement in. So proprioception is one of the critical pieces that feeds information into our brain. And when it feeds information into our brain, it helps our brain feel calm and content. So if you're a kiddo, maybe from the other things that I listed, maybe they also have a lot of meltdowns or tantrums. They get stressed or overwhelmed easily. One of the reasons is that their brain might not be getting enough of this calming input called proprioception. As an example, there was an 8-year-old boy that came to see us, and he had a few sensory issues. Mom said, like clothes, sunscreen. He didn't like that sensation on his skin. The biggest thing Mom noticed from a sensory standpoint is that he always craved really big hugs. So she said if she was getting a hug from her son, he would be squeezing too tightly. He couldn't quite feel how tight he was squeezing, and it almost became uncomfortable. So we started looking at his body, and we found, sure enough, and I'll show you here a little bit later some of the scans that we do in our office as a test to see how well is your kiddo's proprioceptive system working. Is it receiving enough information? Anyway, for this 8-year-old boy, we did those scans. We found that, yep, there's certain areas, especially in his case, in his upper neck, that were off. And once we started adjusting him, Mom noticed, guess what? His mood is a lot more regulated. The little things, he has 2 older brothers, the little things that used to get on his nerves weren't getting on his nerves as much. And then she said he started giving normal size hugs. So that's an example where his brain wasn't getting enough of this good proprioception, and aside from his sensory system being overwhelmed more easily, his mood was also overwhelmed more easily. So proprioception is critical for your kiddo's development if they're young, if they're learning how to hold their head up, if they're learning how to roll, to sit, to crawl, to walk. All those things require good proprioception into the brain. It's critical for handwriting, for sports, to throw or catch a ball, to feel where your body's at and take action with it. This is one of the reasons that it is connected to things like autism, to sensory processing, ADHD, anxiety, because if the brain isn't getting enough of it, it might not be able to coordinate the body, and that might be why your kiddo is in OT or PT or speech. And if the brain's not getting enough of it, it starts to trigger a stress response in the body, and it's more likely that your kiddo's body is going to be in a state of fight flight. It's like that gas pedal is on, their brain's feeling nervous, or in case of an ADHD hyper kiddo, just like you sitting in your desk for 8 hours, you need to move, you want to move. So when we can help kiddos get more of this sensation into the brain, it starts to increase coordination, and it also starts to calm and ground the brain. So where does it come from? One of the most critical areas to send this good information into the brain is actually the upper neck. So if you think of this sensation coming from the joints and the little muscles, the majority actually comes along the spine, because the spine has a joint, a joint, a joint, a little muscle, a little muscle, a little muscle, and the majority is actually from this upper neck. With that being said, the birth process is one of the most common times that we see this area being thrown off. Maybe there was a long labor and delivery. Maybe there was forceps suction, C-section. Maybe a shoulder got stuck and had to be pulled through. And that stress on the neck can throw this area off and start to lose good proprioception into the brain. In the case of this 8-year-old boy, his birth was actually really rapid. And in that case, it's almost like boom, coming into the world so quickly, didn't have time to ease his way out, also threw his neck off. How do we look for it then? Well, what happens is, what we look for as a neurologically based chiropractor is if there's an area of the spine that's off that's affecting the nervous system. We call that a subluxation. One of the trademarks of subluxation is it's actually going to decrease that good calming input into the brain, decreasing proprioception. Because when something gets misaligned, and if it gets stuck there, it's not moving the way it's supposed to, now your kiddo might be up and moving around, they might be playing on the playground, but they don't get enough of it to charge their brain up. So when they go back to the classroom, they have to keep seeking that movement. That's why they're always tapping their pencil or tapping their foot on the ground. They're always chewing on their pen. They get home and they try to fall asleep at night, but their brain isn't calm enough to rest and go into sleep mode. Often it's because they're trying to get this input into their brain, but their brain isn't getting it. So when we look for that subluxation, if we can find that, now we can find where that source of stress into the brain is coming from. That, as I mentioned, was the scans that I just brought up. So this was a 13-year-old boy. He was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but very tough for sleep. He'd get up at 4:30 every morning. His handwriting struggled. His coordination, like at OT, there was this ropes course. He would never climb up. He'd just go along the bottom. He couldn't tie his shoe. And once we found what was going on, so these scans, we're looking for these white bars. When we see all this color, mild, moderate, severe, and then the black is past severe, those are areas of his spine and nervous system that are not moving the way they're supposed to. There's stress built up in that area, and as a result, they're sending stress into his brain. Once we started adjusting him, one of the first things parents noticed, started sleeping in better, calming his system. For the first time ever, he had to be woken up before school because he was still sound asleep. It's way better than 4:30. Teacher called, said, for the first time in class, Brian wrote a 3. OT called and said, hey, that ropes course he was going on the bottom, now he's starting to climb to the top. And several months into care, he comes into the office one day, hey, Dr. Tye, let me show you something. And he kind of looks at his parents, they're like, yep, you can show him, Brian. And he reaches down, lace, boom, tied his shoe for the first time ever at 13 years old. Why? Because all this stress that was going into his brain, this is one of his follow-up scans. We still have some work to do, but you can see way more white on this follow-up scan. That white means more calm into his brain. So if your child is struggling, if they're doing OT, PT, speech, and you found that the results are just kind of not as fast as I want, or we feel like we've hit a plateau, often it's because this key sense is missing into their brain. When we can get good proprioception into their brain with safe and gentle adjustments, what we find is it starts to calm their brain and organize their brain. So now they can get better results with whatever therapy they're doing and really start to progress in their health. So if that resonates, please reach out. You can give us a call, shoot us a message. We're here for you. We'd be happy to see what your kiddo's scans look like. And if you want more information, definitely check out our other videos, our other blogs as well. I'll see you soon.